The empty cradle. The wind was quiet that morning. Kalari sat alone inside a ruined stone house, her hands resting on the edge of a small cradle. The cradle was empty. Dust floated in the air, caught in the pale light from the cracked ceiling above. The war had ended years ago, but Kalari's war never stopped. Every morning she came here, sat beside the cradle, and waited. Waited for someone who might never return. The other villagers had stopped talking to her. They said she was broken, lost in the past. But Kalari remembered. She remembered the night they came, the fires, the sound of metal tearing through the sky, and the human who took her baby and disappeared into the darkness. No one believed her. Why would a human save an alien child? They laughed. Humans destroy. They don't rescue. But Kalari had seen it with her own eyes. She saw the human wrap her baby in a silver blanket and whisper something before running into the storm. She never forgot his face. Years passed, and Kalari waited. Then, one night, the sky burned again. A strange red light flashed across the sky, and something roared above the village. People came out of their homes, pointing up, scared and confused. A fireball was falling from the stars, heading straight for the ground near the mountains. It crashed with a deep thunder-like sound, shaking the earth beneath their feet. Kalari's heart stopped. Something in her mind whispered, "It's him." She ran, faster than she had in years, her legs trembling but her spirit burning. She didn't stop until she reached the crash site, hidden in the forest beyond the hills. Smoke rose from a dented metal pod half buried in the dirt. The air smelled like burned fuel and hot iron. Her hands shook as she stepped closer. The pod hissed, and a door opened slowly for a moment. There was only silence then. A figure stepped out. A human, tall, scarred, and tired-looking, holding something wrapped in a cloth. Kalari froze. She couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. The human looked at her, eyes full of something deep, something heavy, without saying a word. He slowly pulled back the cloth. Inside was a small child. A child with Kalari's pale violet skin and bright gold eyes. Her baby. Tears filled her eyes as she dropped to her knees. A sound escaping her mouth that was half cry, half laugh. The human spoke, his voice low, rough, but gentle. "He's safe now," he said. Kalari looked up at him, confused, angry, relieved, everything at once. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why did you take him?" The human looked away, the pain in his eyes like a storm. "There were others coming," he said. "If I didn't take him, they would have. And they wouldn't have saved him." Kalari stared at him, her body trembling. She wanted to scream, to hit him, to thank him. "Where have you been?" she asked. The human hesitated, looked back at the sky, and said, "Running." The forest was quiet now, the wind moving gently through the trees. Kalari reached out and touched the child's hand. Warm, soft, alive. She looked at the human again. "What is your name?" she asked. "Reed," he said. Kalari nodded slowly. "Why come back now, Reed?" He looked her straight in the eyes and said, "Because they know about him." Kalari felt a chill in her bones. "Who?" Reed didn't answer. He looked toward the stars, his face dark. "They're coming," he said. Then he turned and walked into the trees, the child still in his arms. Kalari stood up and followed. She didn't know what waited ahead, but she knew one thing. Her child was alive, and nothing would take him from her again. Not this time, not ever. Asterisk, the human's promise. The forest was quiet. Too quiet. Kalari walked behind the human named Reed, her eyes locked on the child in his arms. Every step felt heavy, like the ground itself didn't trust him. She had dreamed of this day for years. Imagined running to the cradle and finding her child sleeping peacefully. Imagined smiling, crying, holding him again. But nothing felt like the dream. This was real, raw, and wrong in so many ways. Her child, her son, was not a baby anymore. He looked older, maybe 6 or 7, though only 2 years had passed since the war ended. What had this human done to him? "Stop," Kalari said suddenly. Her voice sharp. Reed stopped, turned slowly, holding the child close. Kalari's hand moved to her belt, gripping the small blade she always carried. Tell me the truth, she said, stepping forward. You said you saved him. From what? Reed looked tired but calm. From the ones who took the others, he said. Kalari's eyes narrowed. What others? Reed shifted his weight, then knelt slowly, placing the child gently on the mossy ground. The child was asleep, his small hands curled like leaves. A faint glow under his skin. Reed stood and looked Kalari in the eyes. You think I took him, he said. I didn't, Kalari blinked. You didn't? I found him, Reed said. They were experimenting on him. Kalari's heart dropped. Who? She asked again, her voice cracking. Reed's jaw tightened. They called themselves the Reach, he said. Scientist pirates. Monsters, I don't know anymore. He paused, looking at the sleeping child. They wanted to understand alien biology. Mix it with human tech. Kalari stepped back, hand over her mouth. My son, she whispered. Reed nodded. They took others like him, hybrid-born, war orphans. No one would notice. He sat down slowly, his voice quieter now. I was a soldier once, he said. I followed orders. Until one day I found this lab, full of cages. Children crying. Kalari sank to her knees. I couldn't leave him there, Reed said. So I didn't. There was silence, only the sound of wind through the trees. Kalari looked at the child again, something warm and painful rising in her chest. What did they do to him? She asked. I don't know all of it, Reed said, but I know they fear him now. Kalari looked up sharply. Fear him? Reed nodded. They think he has something inside him, something new. Kalari reached out and touched the child's forehead. It was warm, and for a second, her fingers tingled. Then the child opened his eyes, golden, glowing, aware. He looked at her and whispered one word. Mother. Kalari broke. Tears ran down her face as she pulled him into her arms. Holding him close, breathing him in, Reed looked away, giving her a moment. But time was short, and danger was close. We can't stay here, he said after a few minutes. They'll come for him. Kalari looked up, her arms still around her son. Where do we go? There's a place, Reed said. A system outside their reach. But it's a long shot. Kalari stood, wiping her face, her voice strong again. Then we take the shot, Reed nodded. I promised him I'd get him home, he said. Kalari stared at him. He is home now, she said. But he's not safe, Reed replied. Kalari looked at the trees around them, the shadows growing longer. I don't trust you, she said. You shouldn't, Reed replied. But I didn't come back for you. He looked at the child again. I came back because I promised him something. Kalari took a deep breath, then nodded. Then we go together, she said. Reed picked up the child, who had already fallen back asleep in Kalari's arms. A faint light pulsed from his chest, steady, strong, as they walked into the forest. Kalari looked at the human beside her. She didn't forgive him, not yet. But something inside her, maybe hope, maybe instinct, told her this was only the beginning, and the real danger had not even begun. The watchers, the child woke up screaming, not a normal scream, not fear, not pain. It was something deeper, like an alarm echoing from inside his bones. Kalari jolted awake, reaching for him. Reed had already drawn his weapon, eyes scanning the shadows. They were camping near the ruins of an old human outpost, deep underground, where signals couldn't escape. They had thought it was safe. They were wrong. The child shook in Kalari's arms, eyes glowing so bright they lit the cave walls. Reed cursed under his breath. They've locked onto him, he said. Kalari looked up, her heart pounding. What does that mean? It means, Reed said, cocking his gun, we're not alone down here anymore. Far above them, in the orbit of the planet, a silent ship opened its eye. It was not human, not alien either. It was something in between. Something old, something forgotten. It didn't move, didn't speak, didn't breathe, but it watched, and what it saw was the child. Back in the cave, the child stopped shaking. He looked at Kalari and whispered, "They're listening." Reed's face went pale. Kalari held him tighter. "Who is listening?" she asked. The child pointed upward, past the stone, the sky, the stars. "The Watchers," he said. "They were there when I was taken, but they didn't touch me. They only watched." Kalari looked at Reed. "You said they experimented on him," she said. Reed nodded slowly. "Yes, but not all of them. Some just observed. Never spoke, never moved." Kalari frowned. "That doesn't make sense." Reed looked at the child again. "It does if he's not just a project," he said. "If he's a signal outside the cave." Something shifted. No footsteps, no sound. But the shadows changed. A figure stood near the entrance. Thin, tall, featureless, its body looked like glass full of stars. It made no sound, but the temperature dropped, and the lights in Reed's gear flickered. The child opened his eyes again and said, "They found us." Reed didn't wait. He grabbed Kalari's arm and pulled her up. "We move now," he said. Kalari ran with the child in her arms. Deeper into the tunnels, behind them, the cave entrance darkened. A soft hum followed, like a machine dreaming. Reed fired back blindly, but the shots hit nothing. The figure didn't follow, but it watched, always watched. After running for almost an hour, they reached an abandoned shuttle bay, long dead and covered in dust. Reed smashed open a panel and powered up a small scout craft. Kalari placed the child in the seat, breathing hard. "Who are they?" she asked. Reed didn't answer right away. Then he said, "They used to be human." Kalari stared. "What?" "Hundreds of years ago," Reed said. "Climbing into the cockpit, they were part of a deep AI program, sent into space to collect data on alien life. They watched too long. They stopped being human." Kalari shook her head. "And now they want him?" Reed nodded. "Or what's inside him." He looked at the child. "Somehow your son woke them up." The shuttle rumbled as it powered up. The entrance to the bay burst open behind them, light spilling in like liquid. Figures stood in the glow, unmoving, unblinking. Kalari whispered, "Please, just fly." Reed slammed the controls, and the ship roared to life. It shot forward through the collapsed tunnel and into the night sky. As they rose higher, Kalari looked back and saw the figures still standing, still watching. No chase, no words, just that awful stillness. She held her son close. He looked up at her and said, "They don't want to hurt me." Kalari blinked. "What do they want?" The child looked ahead, eyes glowing again. "They want to learn," he said. "But if they learn too much," he added quietly, "they break." High above them, the silent ship in orbit began to move for the first time in decades. Not toward them, but toward Earth. The Watchers had made a decision, and humanity was next on their list. Asterisk escape from Velos Prime. The child was not asleep, he only pretended. As the shuttle flew across the broken sky of Velos Prime, the child lay still in Kalari's arms, but his mind was somewhere else. He could feel the sky breathing, feel machines thinking in silence, feel the cold eyes of the Watchers even from light years away. He didn't understand how. But ever since the cage, he had not been normal. Reed was focused on flying, hands tight on the controls. Behind them, the surface of Velos Prime glowed with chaos. Fires lit up old cities, satellites fell from orbit, and the Watcher's ship pulsed like a heartbeat in the stars above. "They've triggered a silent alert," Reed said. "No transmissions, no signals, but every scanner in the system will now look for this shuttle." Kalari held her son tighter. "We need to hide," she said. "No," Reed replied. "We need to run." The ship jumped into low orbit stealth mode, flying close to the dark side of the moon. They had 20 minutes before the engines overheated. "There's an old relay station ahead," Reed said. "Buried under the surface. If we reach it, we can mask the child's signature." The child opened his eyes and said, "It's too late." The ship suddenly shook. Alarms buzzed. Not from outside, but inside the ship's AI. "Something's overriding our navigation," Reed shouted. Kalari looked at the control panel. The screens were filling with symbols, glowing red and blue, writing itself. "What is that?" she asked. Reed's voice dropped. "Language I don't recognize." The child sat up slowly, his hands glowing faintly. "I know it," he whispered. "It's them." He touched the screen, and everything stopped. The alarms went quiet. The ship steadied. The lights returned to normal. Kalari stared at her son. "What did you do?" "I asked them to wait," he said. Reed landed the ship near the abandoned relay station. It was carved into the rock, silent, dead, forgotten by both humans and aliens after the war. As they stepped out, a deep fog rolled across the black ground. Kalari walked close to her son. Watching every shadow, Reed scanned the entrance, then smashed the old lock with a metal bar. Inside, the air was cold and dry. Rust covered the walls, but the power systems hummed softly, still alive. They found a chamber with old broadcast equipment, dusty screens, and storage pods. "This place still works," Reed said, surprised. He began wiring the child's biodata into the shield grid. "If I'm right, this will scramble his signal long enough for us to reach the edge of the system." Kalari didn't speak. She watched her son, who was standing in front of a cracked monitor. "Do you remember this place?" she asked gently. The child nodded. "Only the sounds," he said. Kalari knelt beside him. "Do you know what they wanted from you?" The child looked down. "They wanted to know what makes humans different." Kalari frowned. "But you're not human." The child turned to her, eyes glowing again. "I am," he said. "I'm both." Suddenly, a red light blinked on the wall. Reed cursed. "They found us already." Kalari spun around, pulling the child behind her. "Ships?" she asked. "No," Reed said. "Something worse." The station's lights flickered, and a voice spoke through the static. "Return the hybrid," it said. It wasn't a human voice. It wasn't alien either. It sounded like both speaking at once. Kalari stepped forward, her body shaking. "You're not taking him," she said. "He does not belong to you," the voice replied. "He belongs to the future." Reed grabbed Kalari's hand. "We have to blow the core," he said. "Shut down the relay. Cut their eyes off, just long enough to escape." Kalari hesitated. "This place could collapse. It's our only chance," Reed said. She looked at her son. He nodded. "Just once." "Do it," he said. Reed planted the charge near the power core, then ran back to the ship with Kalari and the child. The ground trembled beneath their feet as they lifted off. The station exploded behind them, a silent burst of red and white in the void. The pulse shattered tracking signals across the system, but the watchers had already seen enough in the blackness of space as they fled. The child turned to Kalari and whispered, "They won't stop." Kalari brushed his hair from his face. "Then we don't stop either," she said. Reed adjusted the course. "Next stop," he said, "Earth." Return to Earth. Earth no longer welcomed strangers, not from space, and not even from itself. Orbit was wrapped in satellites with sharp eyes and cold hearts. Gates in the sky scanned every ship, every signature, every passenger. And when the system found something it didn't understand, it didn't ask questions, it fired. Commander Vos sat inside Control Station 12, watching the feed from the outer defense ring. He saw the small ship entering Earth's approach zone, unregistered, half-silent, running on mass codes. "Is it alien?" An officer asked. Vos shook his head. "Worse," he said. "It's old human tech, repurposed. Should we fire?" Vos stared at the ship, then narrowed his eyes at the strange glowing pulse coming from inside it. "Not yet," he said. "Let's see who's coming home." Inside the shuttle, Kalari looked down at the blue planet. It was beautiful and terrifying. "This is Earth?" she asked. Reed didn't answer at first. "It was," he said. Kalari held her son close. He was quiet again, his eyes fixed on something far away. "They're watching us from the surface," he whispered. Reed cursed. "They've already locked on," a voice came through the comms. "Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Defense Command." "Identify yourself immediately," Reed answered calmly. "This is Shuttle RX Delta, returning under Treaty Code 7, carrying one human, one alien, and one hybrid child." Silence followed. Then, "Redirect to quarantine zone. Prepare for boarding." Kalari's grip tightened. "Are we prisoners now?" she asked. "No," Red said. "We're bait." The shuttle touched down on a metal platform surrounded by towers and turrets. Soldiers in black armor approached, weapons ready. Reed stepped out first. Hands raised, Kalari followed, her child in her arms, head high. A woman in a gray uniform stepped forward. "You must be Reed Solon," she said. "You went dark 6 years ago, saving children," he replied. "In case you forgot." The officer's eyes moved to the child. "He doesn't belong here," she said coldly. "He belongs to both worlds," Kalari replied. "And neither trusts him," the woman said. They were taken to an underground facility. Metal walls, no windows, all light and rules. Kalari sat beside her son in a white room while Reed argued with officials in another. She whispered stories to keep the boy calm, stories of stars, trees, laughter. But the child wasn't listening. He was hearing something else. "They're afraid of me," he said. Kalari nodded. "Yes. Should I be afraid of me too?" He asked. "No," she said firmly. "Why not?" "Because you have a heart," she said, placing her hand on his chest, "and it still beats." Meanwhile, Reed faced a row of officers, scientists, and old war generals. They didn't care about his past or his pain. They only wanted data. "What enhancements does the hybrid carry?" One asked. "Is he stable?" Another asked. Reed slammed his hand on the table. "He's a child," he growled. "Not your experiment." The lead general leaned forward. "If he poses a threat, he will be contained," he said. Reed didn't blink. "If you try to contain him," he said, "you'll start a war." Back in the observation room, the lights flickered. The child stood up, walked to the mirror, and stared into it. The glass began to shimmer. Images appeared, not reflections, but visions, flashes of the Watchers, of alien cities, of Earth burning, of humans screaming. Kalari grabbed his shoulder. "Stop, please," she said. "I'm not doing it," he whispered. "It's showing me what's coming." Alarms blared through the facility. Doors locked, soldiers moved, scientists panicked in the control room. Systems failed one by one. Screens turned black, replaced by a single message: "Project Cradle, awake." Reed burst into the child's room, eyes wide. "They triggered something," he said. "A buried protocol, military, secret, deep AI." Kalari stood in front of her son. "What does it mean?" Reed looked at the child, who was now glowing softly. A strange pattern on his skin. "It means they built something inside him," Reed said slowly. "Something they didn't understand outside." The sky above Earth began to ripple. Satellites spun out of orbit, and old defense systems came online with codes no one remembered authorizing. The child looked up, eyes glowing gold. "They're trying to erase me," he said. Kalari knelt in front of him. "Then we don't let them." Reed helped them into a lift, taking them down to an old hangar. "We're leaving," he said. Kalari looked back. "Where will we go?" Reed stared ahead, jaw tight, to find out what they put inside him, and who else they did it to. Asterisk. The lift stopped with a hiss. Cold air rushed in as the doors opened. Kalari stepped out first, holding her son close. Reed followed, flashlight in hand. They stood in a forgotten place, deep under Earth's surface, where light hadn't touched for years. The walls were smooth, steel gray, lined with terminals and pods. Most were empty, but some still held dust-covered glass tanks. Inside them, shapes, small, half-formed, frozen in time. Kalari turned away, hand on her mouth. "This is a graveyard," she whispered. Reed nodded. "Project Cradle," he said quietly. "They didn't just study hybrids. They made them." The child walked slowly between the tanks, his glowing eyes reflecting off the glass. He stopped in front of one with a cracked label. "So 7. Kalari stepped beside him. "What is it?" she asked. The child touched the tank gently. "This is where I was born," he said. "Not where I lived, not where I grew born." Reed found an active console and powered it on. Old logs began to load, experiments, failures, field reports. He scanned the data, jaw tightening. "They paired DNA from captured aliens and selected humans," he said. "They wanted to create something stronger, something smarter, something that could survive the next war." Kalari stared at him. "And my child was part of this?" Reed nodded slowly. "He wasn't stolen from you," he said. "He was designed." Kalari's breath caught. She staggered back. "No," she said. "He's mine. He was born inside me. I carried him." "You carried the embryo," Reed said carefully. "But they implanted it." Kalari's knees hit the floor. She gripped her son's hand like it was slipping away. "You're still mine," she whispered. The child squeezed her fingers. "I chose you," he said softly. "They wanted me to forget, but I didn't." Suddenly, the lights turned red. A voice echoed through the chamber, cold and sharp. "Unauthorized access. Contain the subjects." Doors slammed shut. Steel locking in every direction. Turrets dropped from the ceiling. Charging up with a high-pitched whine, Reed jumped in front of Kalari and the child, weapon raised. "No," he shouted. "He's not a threat." The turrets ignored him. They aimed for the child. Kalari screamed, shielding her son. Then everything stopped. The lights, the sound, the machines, frozen. The child stood up slowly, eyes glowing like suns. He raised his hand, and the entire system obeyed. The turrets retracted, the doors unlocked. The red lights faded to blue. Reed lowered his weapon. Kalari stared in awe. The child looked at her. "I'm not just a child," he said. "I'm their answer." Reed pulled up one last file on the console. It was titled Project Echo. It showed blueprints, timelines, and more names, names of other hybrids, lost or hidden. "They didn't stop with one," Reed muttered. Kalari stepped beside him. "You mean there are more?" "Yes," Reed said. "And the Watchers know it. That's why they followed us." Suddenly, the console displayed a live transmission. A Watcher ship, approaching Earth orbit again. Kalari's voice shook. "They're coming for the others." "No," the child said. "They're coming for me, because I'm the key." Reed grabbed a tablet, backing up all the data. "We can't stay," he said. "We expose this. We destroy everything they built on lies." Kalari looked at her son, the creation who had become more than his origin. "A child who chose love, not design. Then we end it," she said. As they ran through the halls of the dying facility, alarms screamed again, this time louder. But no longer warnings. A countdown had started. Project Cradle was collapsing, not because of sabotage, because the system had recognized its greatest error. It had created something real, something it couldn't control, and that terrified it more than war. Her child, our future. The world was quiet. Too quiet for a planet on the edge of invasion. Too quiet for a species that had built its survival on noise, war, and fear. Inside the shuttle, Kalari sat beside her son, holding his small hand in both of hers. They were drifting above Earth, waiting for the Watchers, waiting for the humans below to decide what came next, waiting to see if anyone would choose peace. The child spoke, his voice steady. "I don't want to be the key." Kalari looked at him. "I know," she said softly. "I just want to be someone's son," he said. Reed stood by the console, watching satellite feeds crash one by one. "They're jamming us from orbit," he said. "The Watchers are shutting down Earth's defenses, not with force, but with logic." Kalari frowned. "Logic?" "They're rewriting the systems," Reed said, "convincing the machines to stand down." Kalari looked out the window at the pale curve of Earth. "They're not attacking," she whispered. "They're waiting for something." The child nodded. "They're waiting for me," he said. "The shuttle's comms cracked." A signal broke through, but it wasn't from Earth. It was from the Watchers, but this time, not a cold machine voice. This time, it sounded almost human. "You are the first who was made to choose. Do you stand with your origin or your design?" Reed stepped forward. "He chooses us," he said. Silence. Then show us." Without warning, a beam of light surrounded the shuttle. They weren't being attacked, they were being transported. Reality stretched, folded, blinked. Then they were inside the Watcher ship. It was vast and dark, yet pulsing with stars, like walking through the inside of a galaxy. Figures stood all around them. Watchers, motionless, glowing faintly like ghosts of thought. The child stepped forward. Kalari moved to stop him, but he turned and smiled at her. "It's okay," he said. "I need to end what they started." He walked to the center of the chamber, stood still, and closed his eyes. A ripple spread from him, not sound, not light, something deeper. Memory, emotion. The watchers shuddered, their shapes flickering. They saw everything, Kalari cradling him in a burned village, Reed breaking into a lab to free him. Pain, love, sacrifice, fear, human feelings. Alien feelings, real, messy, beautiful things. Then the watchers began to change. Their voices layered together, no longer cold. He is not a weapon. He is not a mistake. He is. Proof. Reed pulled Kalari close as the light grew around them. What's happening? She whispered. He's rewriting them, Reed said. Not with code, with feeling. The child opened his eyes again. Glowing gold white. I don't want to destroy, he said. I want to build. Suddenly, the Watcher ship projected thousands of images into orbit, to Earth, to distant systems, to hidden labs, to broken colonies. A message, not a threat. Not a warning, a possibility, a child born of two worlds, choosing peace over power. Back on Earth, the war rooms went silent. Missiles deactivated, generals stood still. No one gave orders, no one knew how, because for the first time in generations, something impossible had happened. Someone had changed the outcome. Without firing a single shot later, as the shuttle returned to Earth, Kalari sat beside her son. He was quiet, but smiling. Reed looked out the window at the crowds gathering below, humans and aliens standing together, looking up, waiting, not with fear, but with hope. They're here for you, Kalari said. The child looked up at her. No, he said. They're here for what we are together. As they stepped out of the shuttle, the wind was warm, not perfect, not safe, but different, better. A new chapter was waiting, not just for them, but for everyone.